Hey gang, this is C.S. Bernard once again for Geeky News, letting you know that I've watched Captain America First Avenger. And if you'd seen my Green Lantern review, I told you I was looking forward to this film. I was fully justified in doing so, because as anyone can tell you right now, Marvel has the winning film formula for films when it comes to their superhero stock. And that's all there is to it. I mean, they are really kicking ass and taking names at the theater, whereas DC is still struggling. Thanks to this movie, this is the final set in the puzzle that we, or well, not necessarily the puzzle, the collection we have going for the Avengers coming out next summer. And I can tell you, this is probably my favorite film out of the Avengers setup films. We had Iron Man, we had Thor, we had the Incredible Hulk, although I'll tell you this much, that the trailer I saw for the Avengers next year, which features at the end of the movie, doesn't really feature the Hulk. I looked, but I'm unsure what we're going to be doing with the character if he does show up. He may have been replaced by Black Widow in this instance. Just saying. Regardless, if he does show up, I'm not, huge on this information. After all, I am a bit more of a DC fanboy, which, again, is rather odd of me to admit this, but see, that's what I'm saying. This is a winning film. I'm a DC fanboy. I love this film, so other than that, I don't know that much more about what Marvel's got up its sleeves about the upcoming film. Still, this is a great conclusion to the lead-up into the Avengers next year. The film in itself is very well self-contained, 2 hours directly. First hour spent on really building up Captain America as portrayed by Chris Evans, who does a very good job. And of course setting up the premise of we have to defeat the Red Skull and his Hydra organization and their use of the Cosmic Cube. Tesseract is what they keep calling it, but I prefer Cosmic Cube because, well, it has cosmic in the title. Still, though I do say they have a winning formula, I do have to admit it is rather formulaic. I don't get necessarily emotionally invested in a lot of the Marvel films. They don't really grab me like I really wish they would. Don't get me wrong, Iron Man was okay, but thanks to the fact that Tony Stark is a douchebag, I couldn't get very attached to him. He had his moments, but, come on, Robert Downey Jr. plays him up too good as being an asshole. But at least that's likable and memorable. With Thor and Captain America, though, I do feel more empathy for these guys because, I don't know, they're more, well, at least in personal tastes, the ideal of a superhero, or at least a hero in the basis sense of the term. In the case of Steve Rogers, he is the everyday little guy that's reaching for higher summits, and he does that. He basically is the American dream personified, at least in superhero spandex, terminology and visuals. At any rate, the film, as I said, it's basically rather formulaic. You have, a really nice guy, especially in Captain America here, who's put up against the standard taking over the world plot led by Hugo Weaving's Red Skull. And that's really about it. At least, it does work in terms of just, getting straight to the, here's the plot, he saved the day, so forth and so on. I wish there was more. I mean, there are all sorts of different angles they could have taken with this film to make it more psychologically or philosophically compelling. But what are you going to do? By avoiding that, they probably avoided a lot of extra pitfalls. If you're not good enough to handle that kind of depth or direction with a film, don't attempt it. On the whole, though, I can do nothing but praise the film, at least in having that formulaic approach of the problem, deal with it, day is saved. There are hardly any characters you don't like. Even amongst the villains, you do have a certain kind of charm or attraction to them. in what may be rather risque, I'm going to say that I kind of wish we had invested a little bit more characterization into the Red Skull. Yes, I'm saying we probably could have, better humanized the Nazi. Dangerous to say, in the least. But I was somewhat irked by the fact that in the comic books he was portrayed as a more loyal follower to Nazism in general, and of course to the Nazi regime in Europe. Here in this film, he's just immediately ready to cast off that regime and take over for himself, which really throws me for a loop, because how would you go about doing that? True, he wields the cosmic cube, but he doesn't know what else it can do beyond make lasers. And lasers, though you may have, resources you will need. And even though he, of course, does get the resources to a degree, I don't think it's enough to, immediately cast off the Nazi regime's control over his organization. Again, his loyalty to the Nazi regime and to Hitler could have been, used to some degree and to some advantage. That being said, though, what are you going to do? I mean, it really does boil down to getting straight to the war within a war, superhero versus supervillain thing, with just World War II as window dressing in this case. I have had some people complain that, it's not very historically accurate. Well, I don't remember this guy on the battlefield. Don't get me wrong, he was created during that time period, which I did appreciate them referencing with comic books being thrown in the film. Nice touch. Very nice, especially featuring, of course, the cover that features Captain America punching Hitler in the face. You don't get more epic than that. But, well, there you are. I mean, I turned to my nephew when I was watching the film and said, I felt like turning to him and saying to him that, oh, well, seeing the picture of Cap punching Hitler in the face, movie's over. You don't really need to do anything else. But beyond that, the film does kind of have that, I will say it does kind of have shades of Indiana Jones to it. What with the opening scene with the crypt being reminiscent of The Last Crusade, as well as the motorcycle chase, also Last Crusade, and of course the ending where the Red Skull is blasted by the Cosmic Cube onto the Bifrost, the gateway rainbow bridge to Asgard and the other 9 realms. That, of course, referencing Raiders of the Lost Ark. Although in Raiders of the Lost Ark, those Nazis were destroyed. This one's just been tossed onto the Norse god's superhighway. Maybe Loki will give him a ride-in for the Avengers film. We'll see. Although that is one thing I should point out. If you didn't see Thor, I recommend it. And, it is a shame because at least there, I was much more invested in the villain. I felt there was something greater to be appreciated in him. To say that a wicked god of the old Norse religion is more sympathetic than a Nazi, well, that's kind of saying something. And also, I feel, kind of says something about the fact that we almost, well, there you go, we dehumanize Nazis to an absurd degree. A lot of them deserve it, no doubt, but they are human beings. Homo sapien, they walk and talk, and a lot of them walk amongst us as neo-Nazis in plain sight. We just don't really, notice every one of them. Not all of them shave their heads and have iron crosses tattooed to their chest. There you go, just saying. Regardless, I did find myself not very caught up in the romance in this film. Don't get me wrong, I did appreciate Peggy Carter in this film way more than I did Carol Ferris in Green Lantern. But I didn't get, I don't know, maybe other people did, but I didn't really see the great connection we had in this film with, Cap and his leading lady. Or his team, the Howling Commandos, the Howlers. But considering the fact that, you know, if you had a basic understanding of this, you knew these characters weren't going to be around forever. So just featuring them was probably the best idea, as opposed to, say, my complaints with Green Lantern, which had, in current setting, these characters of Tomo Ray, Kilowog, Sinestro, the Guardian, so forth and so on, and only had them in the background. Really, they were just, you know, window dressing themselves. At least here it makes sense. And truthfully, these guys and gal get a lot more screen presence than the others in Green Lantern. Again, like I said, Marvel's got it figured out in terms of live action films. So, you know, I recommend this, and of course, I'm now all fired up for the Avengers. True, I'm much like many other people that complained about the other superhero flicks in the Marvel line. We were hoping that, you know, it was like, could we tone down the Avengers? We know it's coming. We don't need to be reminded of it, and thus have a lot of scenes yanked out that could have been used to better develop, say, the hero or something else in this film. But at least between Thor and Captain America, I really do root for these heroes. Sorry, Robert Downey Jr. does too much of a good job making Tony Stark, Iron Man, a douchebag in his films. He's okay, and he'll probably be a lot more fun when he's bouncing off as the wild card in terms of personality against, you know, the straight men in Thor and Captain America himself. Beyond that, I can really praise the film for its use of practical effects when it can get away with it versus CGI. There is a lot of CGI, unavoidable given the circumstances, but here it's, you know, not CGI costumes and the like. Even the Red Skull's appearance is done with practical effects of makeup and a mask, and, you know, in a more traditional sense, which I appreciate it. And I feel that the Red Skull here is portrayed is probably the most realistic we'll ever get, barring some, you know, creative development with practical effects in the near future or the far-flung future. Still, for what it does, you know, a rock'em sock'em superhero flick that saves the day, leaves you with a good victorious feeling, this is it. And more than anything, I really do recommend this film purely for the hero. Everything else, it's just part of the adventure story. And of course, as a result, I definitely recommend the Avengers when it comes out soon. So, beyond that, all I can give it is a 4 out of 5 stars. Specifically for Cap himself, the way the film was shot, the characterizations done with him and the people in his team, all of that, great work. Just wish we had gotten something a bit more developed with the use of the Cosmic Cube and Red Skull and, you know, the other side of the equation. It is one of those films where the hero definitely outshines the villain. Don't get me wrong, other films are supposed to do that, and they do, but here, it's just straight up forward. This is the local hero makes good. So, as for me, C.S. Bernard, I'm heading out, and I'll see you again next time, later on.